Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you once again, and thanks for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 7th day of December now, 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First graphic, we have hazardous weather, and we'll start down there in the Juneau area. That's a continuation of the flood watch that's been going in that area through the weekend, and still going, and will continue for tonight and tomorrow, and that's for the area there, northern Panhandle along Lynn Canal, due to the snow melt and the heavier rains that have fallen, and so the possibility of some serious flooding exists. And back to the west there, we've got a blizzard warning that continues for the Kuskokwim Delta, and that's mostly the coastal areas of the Kuskokwim Delta. And throw Nunivak Island in there, forgot to shade it red, but that includes the area there. And that's out until, let's see, well, tonight and tomorrow. Tonight through tomorrow. And that's for the gusty winds, 40-45 miles an hour, again, mainly along the coast, and some new snow, blowing snow, reducing visibilities to, well, less than a quarter mile at times. Better conditions over the inland areas. And up over the Yukon Delta and lower Yukon River Valley there, Grayling, and those areas out toward St. Mary's. Winter weather advisory for gusty winds to 40 miles an hour and maybe a couple inches of snow, and that'll reduce visibilities down to less than a half mile at times in those areas. And that's out also for tonight into tomorrow. And then the winter weather advisory up there over the Yukon Flats, Fort Yukon, into the Koyukuk Valley, back on down into Tanana there, west of the central Tanana Valley in the greater Fairbanks area. That's for the same conditions. That's out for tonight and until midnight tonight. There, winter weather advisory for, again, total snowfall in some areas, 4 to 5 inches at the most. Other areas seeing a lot less than that, but the windy conditions there up to 40 miles an hour from the east-northeast, that'll continue to reduce visibilities quite a bit, down to probably half mile, possibly less. And that's mostly for the summits of the Elliott and Dalton highways. And again, that's until midnight tonight. Otherwise, warning and advisory free everywhere else. Satellite imagery showing low pressure tracking up toward the Kenai Peninsula, actually east of Kodiak Island. And that pushing moisture and rain and, of course, warmer conditions, much warmer conditions here into southern Alaska, what we had earlier on. And rain across the Kenai Peninsula today, North Gulf Coast. Amounts ranged from the southern Kenai Peninsula, Port Graham there, had about 4/10 of an inch of precipitation. Seward picked up about half an inch. These are rainfall amounts, 12-hour rainfall amounts ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And Cordova, about 4/10 of an inch, half an inch at Yakutat there with surges of moisture pushing in across the Panhandle. You can see something of a break, though, coming onto the central and south coast of the Panhandle. Looks like some clearing skies there, but shower and rain, lighter rainfall amounts over the southern southeast coast. Up to the north, it was a little heavier, with Gustavus was picking about 6/10 of an inch of rain, again, a 12-hour amount there. Craig, farther down, they had about 4/10 of an inch of precipitation. Out to the west, though, Bethel picked up around an inch of snow, along with gusty winds there. And areas over the southwest interior, they had anywhere from a trace to maybe an inch of snow, half an inch or so, but nothing really very heavy. And same thing, maybe a little bit more enhanced snowfall along the southern slopes of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, nothing too significant there as well. Kind of windy, Delta Junction, east winds 35 miles an hour in gusts today, or actually peak gusts 36 miles an hour. Indian Mountain there, back in up to the toward the west central interior areas, had a gust 35 miles an hour there. And then Shaktoolik there northwest of Caltech had a peak wind gust of 50 miles an hour. And Tuksuk Bay still looking at winds gusting to 40 miles an hour. So again, along the coastal areas there, strongest winds. And That'll begin to slowly diminish later tonight and tomorrow. Winds are definitely lighter over the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians today, and not much in the way of any storminess going on out over the Bering Sea. The cold air pretty much in place there. Scattered snow showers around, but still kind of windy in the St. Paul area and the Pribilof Islands, with gusts to about 40 miles an hour out of the north and temperatures in the upper 20s. And otherwise on the chart, you can see the original low there tracking up toward the Kenai Peninsula today, tracked east of Kodiak Island. Lighter rainfall amounts there at Kodiak State Airport, about 1/4 of an inch. And new low forms there near Togiak Bay, so that kept those gusty winds and snow over the southwest interior. And right on into the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. A little more showery there. And then the rain with that front coming up toward the North Gulf Coast and Cape St. Elias, seeing winds gusting to, let's see, it was about 45 miles an hour, close to 50 miles an hour. So we're gale warnings there for the eastern North Gulf Coast today. And windy conditions along the north coast of the Panhandle, less wind down to the south along with less rainfall amounts. Interior pretty much dry, again breezy over the higher elevations. And a narrow band of snow showers with that trough there right through the central interior to the eastern Brooks Range area, basically dry for the North Slope, and open water there for the Chukchi Sea into the Bering Strait. That's the resulting in those areas of light snow flurries, snow showers, and foggy conditions. Otherwise, trough coming southward there, kind of enhancing the snow showers as it drops into the Aleutians tonight. And so that'll continue. Rain and snow mix depending on your temperature and elevation there for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. On up into Bristol Bay, mixed precipitation there from northeast Bristol Bay across Cook Inlet and along the North Gulf Coast. The immediate coast will be in the form of rain and periods of rain for the Panhandle. Wind's not too bad there, and the rainfall won't be all that heavy as well. Just about dry conditions in the Copper River Basin. And looking ahead to tomorrow, again, surges of moisture continue to roll into the southeast coast under southwest flow, so periods of rain continue there. And also for the North Gulf Coast with areas of snow over the inland areas, mostly southern Alaska on up to the northeast. Eastern Arctic coast, kind of a trough dropping southwestward around the high pressure area there over the Arctic. And the next system trying to push gale force winds back into the western Aleutians. And definitely will do that tomorrow night, or Tuesday night, tomorrow night, and Wednesday. And that across the southern southeast Bering Sea, full gales. And that'll push into the central Aleutians. High pressure along the west coast, eastern Bering, light winds, variably cloudy skies, diminishing snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, and stays unsettled and wet along the North Gulf Coast. And a warm front spreads rain across Dixon entrance to the southern Panhandle. Lows tonight below zero north of the Alaska Range, anywhere from 10 to 15 below or so, and then 20s south central Alaska, 30s and 40s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow. A little below zero there, single numbers in Tanana Valley, below zero Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, North Slope, and mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, mid-30s Kodiak Island, and lower to mid-30s for the Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s out over the Aleutians, followed by lows, again, colder now, 15 to 25 below.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to first line weather graphic. Tuesday morning, zone IFR widespread there from the western Arctic coast across the North Slope all the way over to the Mackenzie River Delta and Bay areas there. And looks like the central coast there, kind of in the marginal VFR zone. But IFR extends south of the Brooks Range across the Koyukuk Valley, right through the central interior, into the Kuskokwim Valley, and extends to the western Alaska Range and spills into western Cook Inlet. And then extends out Kuskokwim Bay there across Cape Newenham on down to the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. But much improved conditions out over the central Bering Sea and western Aleutians with a lot of VFR out there as well as on the west coast. IFR, Kenai Peninsula, northern Prince William Sound, northern and western Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle, and then down the east side with looks like VFR for central and southern Prince of Wales Island, otherwise marginal. For the afternoon Tuesday, IFR, big chunk there up over the eastern North Slope Arctic coast into the upper Yukon Valley and southward, not quite to Eagle, marginal VFR to Eagle, but south of there, upper Tanana Valley 40 Mile Country VFR, with IFR narrowing over the central interior as it heads southwestward there along the Kuskokwim River Valley, or actually in the Kuskokwim Valley. And marginal VFR, Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, Dillingham, VFR Cook Inlet, marginal for the Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR Alaska Peninsula, central eastern Bering Sea, and then marginal VFR, the next system pushing into the western Aleutians. By Wednesday morning, some IFR, not too bad with it though, just around Shimian Attu, with marginal VFR spreading toward Atka. And then marginal VFR continues over most areas of the eastern Bering Sea to the Bering Sea side of Unalaska Island, Alaska Peninsula, into Bristol Bay, northward to the Bering Strait. IFR continues eastern Arctic coast, eastern North Slope, and central and eastern Brooks Range into the Kobuk, western Koyukuk Valley. IFR also along the central western Alaska Range there, and a little bit better in Cook Inlet, but still some marginal VFR for the Kenai Peninsula, less IFR for the North Gulf Coast, and about the same, no change for the Panhandle. Outlook for Wednesday afternoon. Eastern Arctic Coast IFR into the North Slope there, and then some VFR along the West Coast again, Western Interior, and also over the Eastern Interior there, south of the Yukon River, and to the eastern Alaska Range, with IFR along the southern slopes of the central and western Alaska Range. Otherwise, south central Alaska, marginal VFR, marginal for the North Gulf Coast, IFR possible northern Prince William Sound, and mostly marginal for the Panhandle, marginal for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. A little bit better there for the Fox Islands with some VFR showing up. Passes, Anatuvik, pretty well go with IFR is a pretty good bet tomorrow for both Anatuvik and Adigan. Pass, especially lowest conditions on the north approach of both passes. For Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times throughout the entire day. Same forecast for rainy, marginal VFR kind of day for Tuesday there. Windy, marginal VFR with possible IFR in the southern entrance. Isabel, IFR with possible marginal VFR south side. And from Mentasta, VFR. Tonita looks marginal with better conditions, VFR toward the western approach. And Portage, IFR to start, becoming marginal VFR about midday or late morning and into the and through the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, IFR once again, for like it's been for the last 4 or 5 days. And for the freezing levels at the surface there, up across the Panhandle, otherwise off the chart there out to the west, just the surface coming from northwest to southeast across the Bering Sea near the Pribilofs to the False Pass area, Akun Island, and then up along the coastal area, hugging the coastline there up the Alaska Peninsula and the North Gulf Coast. Icing could be some considerable moderate in areas, mostly the eastern North Gulf Coast there and across the Panhandle. It'll be the most significant area of icing tomorrow. Less of a threat, but still the possibility of some mixed isolated moderate rime icing there, Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, and in the interior, and then the next batch poised to move into the western Aleutians. Jet stream, really just really off to the south there, and so not much of a factor. 60 knots from the southwest over the North Slope, and for 9,000 feet, we've got 55 knot northeast winds continuing there off the Yukon Delta coast, wrapping around the across the Alaska Peninsula, and westerlies 35 to 40 into the Panhandle. 50 knots possibly out of the southwest over the Alaska Range. 3,000 feet, 40 to 50 knot winds around the low there in Bristol Bay. And turbulence, moderate chop, southern Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, Seward Peninsula, and deteriorating conditions moving in.
It can be many miles long, from 1 to 100 feet high, traveling at 400 miles per hour. This ocean monster is known as a tsunami, and it can wreak havoc on coastal populations and landscapes. A tsunami is a series of ocean waves caused by any large and sudden disturbance of the sea surface. Tsunamis can be generated by landslides, volcanic eruptions, or even meteorite impacts in the ocean, but they are most often caused by an earthquake where there's a sudden displacement of the ocean floor. When that happens, there's a transfer of energy from the sea floor to the ocean, causing waves on the surface to radiate outward in all directions. In deep waters, these waves may not even be detectable. But when the tsunami enters shallower waters, the wave speed slows and its height increases. The water along the coast may recede noticeably. A large wall of turbulent water, called a bore, may also form. When the tsunami hits, it may come ashore like a fast-rising flood and strike with devastating force. The series of waves may continue for hours. The first one may not be the last or the largest. For your safety, know the potential warning signs of an incoming tsunami. A strong earthquake that causes difficulty standing. A rapid rise or fall of the water along the coast. A loud ocean roar. When you're in a coastal area, it's important to keep alert for messages from local officials, such as lifeguards, police, the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers, and NOAA All Hazards Radio. If you find yourself in a location of a tsunami strike, here's what you need to do to stay safe. Keep calm. Walk or run to higher ground, 100 feet above sea level or 1 mile inland. Do not drive. Keep roads open for emergency vehicles. If you cannot move to higher ground, use the stairs to get to the 3rd floor or higher in a sturdy building. Follow all instructions from local officials and stay out of coastal areas until authorities issue an all clear. Tsunamis can strike any coastline in the world and can affect locations thousands of miles away from where they formed. They may be uncommon, but the devastation they cause makes them a deadly force in nature. For more information on tsunamis, go to the following sites.
Tsunami, a killer wave, speeding across the ocean at 400 miles an hour. It smashes into land, destroying everything in its path. Tsunamis do not have a season, but they can strike any coast at any time. If one forms close to the shore, the shaking of the earth and a loud roar may warn of its approach. But when a tsunami forms across the ocean, it can take hours to reach the shore, enough time to warn people to move to higher land. Over the past 20 years, NOAA has developed DART, a real-time monitoring system that provides data for forecasting tsunamis. The DART systems have been deployed in earthquake-prone areas throughout the ocean, including the Pacific and Indian basins. A DART system combines a surface buoy and a sensor on the ocean floor. This sensor detects changes in water pressure and seismic activity and transmits the data back to the surface. If these changes indicate a tsunami may form, the buoy signals an alert via satellite to the tsunami warning centers in Alaska and Hawaii. Back at the centers, scientists plug the data into pre-existing models. These models predict the height, the arrival time, and the coastal locations that the tsunami will hit. Watches and warnings are issued to the affected communities so preparations can begin. Today, 47 DART stations are positioned all around the world, ready to detect and warn coastal communities about the next potential tsunami. With the DART system and tsunami warning centers in place, we are now better prepared to predict a killer wave before it strikes.
December 26, 2004. What began as an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean ended as the most deadly tsunami in recorded history, with nearly 240,000 lives lost. This was a devastating wake-up call to coastal communities and tsunami research. Prior to this event, only 6 of NOAA's Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunami, or DART, buoys were in place. Scientists could only predict tsunami arrival times, not flood potential. And there was not a global tsunami warning system. Today, 10 years later, we can tell a different story. U.S. and international coastlines are far better prepared for such a catastrophe, thanks in large part to research and technology developed at the NOAA Center for Tsunami Research at Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory. NOAA's DART array is now complete, with 39 buoys operated by the National Weather Service's National Data Buoy Center. Along with 21 international buoys, this array can measure a tsunami wave as small as 1 centimeter in the open ocean and provide these data in real time to forecast when a tsunami may hit the coast and how much flooding there will be. NOAA scientists and engineers are currently testing the 4th-generation DART buoy that will be able to measure local tsunamis as well as distant ones. Flooding forecast models incorporate local topography and historical tsunami data in order to more accurately predict exactly how a tsunami might behave when it reaches shore. NOAA has 75 site-specific models that can provide high-resolution flooding forecasts for effective response and mitigation during a tsunami event. NOAA has gathered data from every tsunami since 2004 to improve its forecast models. Today, it operates the world's only real-time tsunami flooding forecast system using DART data to accurately compute flooding forecasts. The NOAA Tsunami Warning Centers make tsunami data available on the internet and issue advisories, watches, and warnings through the Emergency Alert System and via NOAA weather radios. While it is impossible to prevent a tsunami, we are now much better prepared to detect them and predict their paths and impacts, so those in coastal communities can take the steps necessary to safely protect themselves.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis, still got the open area there east-southeast of Wrangell Island and west of the western Arctic coast, but that's sort of starting to close in with some thinner ice showing up even in that, well, it's not exactly open water there. There is some thinner ice scattered around, but the heavier in toward the coast, and Norton Sound pretty much iced in, as well as Kotzebue Sound. Bering Strait now closed off, looks like, and they'll continue to increase ice conditions over the next several days. And coastal water forecasts for the southeast coast along the outer coastline, southwest or west-southwest, 20 to 25 knots, with seas running 17 to just shy of 20 feet. And over the inside waters, all southerly at 15 knots with 3-foot seas, with the exception of Clarence Strait, where seas will be at 8 feet, which means small craft advisories due to high seas. And for the day Wednesday, Clarence Strait, northwest 20 knots, seas down to 4 feet now, north 10 for Stevens Passage, 3-foot seas, north 20 Lynn Canal, 4-foot seas. And small craft advisories along the coast of Prince of Wales Island. Southeast winds 25 knots, seas 18 feet. East winds 20 knots there for the central coast, and southeast 30 knots for the north coast, with seas building to 12 feet. Excuse me. Prince William Sound, southerlies at 20 knots tomorrow with 4-foot seas. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, south winds 20 knots, southwest 20 knots for the western coast. And for the Barren Islands, small craft advisories, southerlies 25 knots, Kamishak Bay, southeast to 20, south 20 for Cook Inlet with 6 to 7-foot seas. For Wednesday, northern Cook Inlet, light northerlies at 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And Middleton Island area there, the zone, south 15, 11-foot seas, western North Gulf Coast, southwest at 20, and small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, northwest 30 knots, seas 10 feet. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay for westerlies at 35 knots, and southern Cook Inlet, northwest at 20, seas at 3 feet. Kodiak Island there, actually from Castle Cape right up the east side of Kodiak Island, southwest winds 30 knots, seas near 15 feet. Shelikof Strait, south 20, southeast 20 knots, Bristol Bay, and then gales for the Alaska Peninsula for west-northwesterlies, 35 knots, seas 15 to 17 feet. And for Wednesday, Alaska Peninsula, north winds 30 knots, seas 10 feet. Bristol Bay north at 20, with 6-foot seas, and then 25-knot winds there from Castle Cape up the east side of Kodiak Island from the west and northwest. Seas at about 11 feet. Chillicothe Strait, east or west winds, 20 knots, 6-foot seas. Unalaska Island, west-northwest, 30 knots tomorrow, 10 to 16-foot seas. Unmac Island, northwest, 20 to 25 knots, 8 to 11-foot seas. Adak northwest at 15, 6 to 9-foot seas. And then small craft advisories with that next system pushing in and increasing or tightening the gradient up. So small craft advisories into the western Aleutians from Amchitka, well, they'll be southeast at 25, 30 knots for Kiska, Shimian at 2. And then actual storm force winds come in, 45 knots from the east from Kiska to Shimian-Attu for Amchitka Island, southeast 50 knots, and for the Adak-Atka area, storm warnings on the south side of the islands, Bering Sea side east 45 knots, Unmac Island east southeast 45 knots, and Unalaska Island east 45 knots. Tomorrow, northerly winds at 30 knots from the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, right down the Yukon Delta coast, as well as St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs, all north 30 knots. Gales, though, for the Yukon Delta coast for 35-knot winds from the north. And for Wednesday, 25-knot northerlies, St. Lawrence Island, just 15 knots from the north for Norton Sound. Yukon Delta coast, north at 20. Small craft advisories, Kuskokwim Delta coast, north 30. And then east winds increasing to 40 knots, especially for St. George Island and the Pribilofs in the afternoon on Wednesday, east 35, St. Matthew Island. Central eastern Boulevard Sea coast tomorrow, northeast 15, northeast 20 knots on the west side. Small craft advisories there, Wales to Cape Thompson from the north, 25 knots. No change in that forecast for Wednesday. East-northeast winds, central and western Arctic coast at 15 knots, east 15 over toward Demarcation Point. For tonight, low pressure moves up to the Kenai Peninsula, so mixture of precipitation over south-central Alaska. And the coastal areas, though, will see rain into the Panhandle. And for tomorrow, blizzard warning ends tonight for the Kuskokwim Delta, as that low moves slowly or sets up over Bristol Bay. Next system pushes gale force winds or storm force winds into the central Aleutians Wednesday afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.